Hey folks, so welcome to another chapter of this tutorial. And in this video, I want to explain to you how I do my scattering. And as you can see in my work, foliages are an important part because I really like foliages, right? And here, and here, and here, and here, and here. So I'll explain to you the workflow on how to, manage them because they can be really resource intensive and tips and tricks on add-ons that I use and all that good stuff. So let's go. Now, if I'm to do like a foliage, let's have a placeholder person here for scale. I don't do the traditional particle system, at least I don't do it how people would usually do it. Okay? Now, let's prepare a ground material first. Now, well then, if you say so, then how do you do your foliages? Well, there's a number of ways on how I do it, but I'll show you. The first way, I think this is the quickest way, but also the most resource demanding way, is to do it with this add-on called Scatter, or is it called now GeoScatter, okay? And you can buy it, I think. I don't know how much it's priced right now, but yeah, here's the website, right? Download. And yeah, GeoScatter, Blender Market. I think it has to be like 99. Yeah, it's 99. So I got it for 60, but they have since tweaked the pricing. But anyways, the first way is I use scatter, okay? And I just go here, choose the target, right? As how you would just choose it. And then I'll go to biome scatter. And then I'll choose maybe something like a dryland of, yeah, maybe this one, right? Dryland thin. And you can just click this to scatter everything into this box too. That's possible, but I would sometimes just choose one or two because, again, like I said, it's really resource intensive. So this is the thing that I use usually, okay? And it's from the biome of the scatter. And I would sometimes also go to scale, and on the uniform scale, I would just, you know, oh, sorry, where's default scale, sorry. I would just go to here and just scale it up, and then you'll get like a tall grass type of deal. And again, this is really resource intensive, so this might not bore anybody, but there's also some ways to work with this so that it's not quite resource intensive. So the first way is, let's say we have the camera here, right? The first way is you can go to display as, instead of placeholder, you choose single cloud so that you have that, okay? And your viewport is gonna be like super goddamn light after this. And then the second thing that you can do is, let's see, is camera culling. And you can turn on that and visibility. And you can go to cam optimization and it'll do this. And you can tweak how far it goes outside the camera and how much it's inside. You can also distance cull, which is it's going to reduce the amount of particle that happens the farther away you get. And it has a fall off as well. And then you can also do occlusion culling. So this is gonna work when there's a building. So let's say these are buildings, and whatever's behind it is gonna be occluded. But the way that works is you've got to put this into a collection first, and then you can turn on occlusion culling and surface only, meaning if this happens. So surface only happens when you have something like this. So if there's a hill, right, there's a peak, then whatever's behind that, it's not going to be registered as a place to show particles. And that's why I rarely start with a flat ground. I always start with a ground that's not flat. And then There's another mode is surface and colliders, which is you can choose this building, and however you move this building, it's going to not show what's behind it. And be careful, this can be quite heavy, so you might want to use surface only, and when you want to render, then you want to do this. Or, you only do this when your buildings are in final place. But anyways, I digress. But yeah, there's a way to make it light, and when you go to render mode, it's going to come back to like the normal particle stuff. Okay? And you can also play with this, oh shit, a lot to make it more organic. So you have a wind here, and depending on how strong you make it, the more tilted it's gonna be. You can also play with turbulences, right? How fast the turbulence, how strong, the direction of the wind you can also tweak. And in fact, that's the thing that I did for one of my personal projects with foliage. So there's that. And there's also another way to use scatter, which is to use custom assets from Megascan. So let's say I have this grass here, and I feel like this is very rarely used in concept art. Like, I mean, these are really good, folks. Please use them. So let's say I'm going to use one of these weeds, like perhaps this thing, okay? Or let's do somewhere already downloaded. Maybe this wheat over here, okay? Well, then we can export into Blender. All right, we have our wheat over here. And first of all, let me tweak the material because it's a bug. And you can just scatter this guy. Let me turn off this parenting first. You can select all, and then with that still being targeted, you can choose here. And I'll choose this guy, and I'll just press scatter. And it's gonna scatter, but obviously the scale is not going to be correct. So with that plan still selected, I'll press Ctrl A and I'll apply the scale. Now it's going to be the right scale, but the rotation, I think it's still out of whack. So let me turn off the wind effect. I think it's already off, right? Yeah. Now let me just go to the individual plant, and I'll Control A and apply rotation. Now it's going to be correct, okay? And what's cool about Megascan assets is, the fidelity that you can get from them sometimes is really, really great. And, again, it's very rarely used by people. Let me see. I want to tweak the scale, default scale. Factor by, oh, it's too big. And there's that, right? Let's choose another lighting. Yeah, I like the soft one. Right? So that's how you do like a meadow like this. Again, folks, use Megascans. It's, you paid for it. If you don't use it, then that's kind of a waste. Oh, anyways. So that's how I would scatter stuff. I mean, you can scatter rocks, everything. You can even scatter this human model if you want, but that's how I would use it with Geoscatter. But I also mentioned another way that I scatter things, which is, let me delete this system, which is the less resource intensive one, which is using a plane and a particle system, but you'll see what's the difference. So to prepare it, let me put all this grass into a collection, like a wheat, okay? And this one should be the wheat pad, all right? And let me rename that into a wheat pad. And I'll go to particle system, I'll press a new particle, go to here, make it 10, children, interpolate it, make it all 10, and then on render, I'll choose collection. Then instance collection, I'll choose the wheat collection. Now you'll have these guys, right? And then you'll notice that it's, tilted to the side again, but no worries. Press on advanced, go to rotation and global X. Okay, so no matter how you tilt the plane, it's going to be facing upwards. And then the next thing is you can just, I like to make it round, so I'll press Control Shift B to make it like that. And I'll turn off the emitter here in the viewport display and also on the render, so then the emitter is hidden. And now I can just place it strategically based on where I want it to be scattered. And obviously this is not big enough, so let's make it bigger. And again, this is less resource intensive, than scatter, and you can art direct this one easily, right? It's easily art directed, and you can really design the shapes of your foliage this way. And there's gonna be a time when, you know, you have so much of these planes, it's gonna be heavy, and one way how you can mitigate that is to make it not show the solid. So you can go back to the weed, select all, go here, go to viewport display, press Alt, and then you choose here is bounce. So that way it's going to show bounce rather than the full asset. But if you render it, it's gonna show up as just a normal plant. And that's how you can optimize it a bit more too if you're using this method, okay? You can, again, randomize the rotation, you can randomize the scale. That's also possible, but there is how you can. Obviously, the drawback of this is it's not as instant as scatter, but, you know, it can be very, very resource, you know, effective. And you can also do this for trees. Let's say I have this polygonic trees here. You know, I have so many add-ons, folks. It's funny. Botanic. So let's say I want a coniferous tree, and one of them is the spruce here. And you always want to make sure make editable is on so that you can have the actual instance in the scene. So let me get the spruce and this pine. And again, this is just an example. Another pine. And then the cool thing about polygonic is it's already its own collection, so I don't have to make it. And then I can duplicate this. I can move this into a tree pad. Okay. And then I'll duplicate this particle system by clicking this. And then in the render here, I'll choose the coniferous. So then I'll have my trees to scatter around. Okay. Again, the cool thing about this is you can art direct it. This is too much, I think. Yeah. You can art direct this thing. Let me delete the buildings. You know. And it's resource effective. And again, to make it lighter, you can select that all, go here, Alt, and then choose bounce. And then it's going to be so goddamn light. And there's that. There's how I scatter stuff, folks. And everything else is basically just working on it. But this is a really neat way to scatter shit. Like, can be rocks, can be anything. Okay? So yeah, that's the scattering part, and I'll see you in the next video.